All right, our focus here today is our entry point is going to be some mysterious phrases that are found in a number of these fragments that were discovered. And the amazing thing is that the names that there's some names that keep on coming up again and again. And really, I would say, who cares? Who cares about what some heretical group, with the names that they called some other people? Like, why would I care what a group of heretics have to say? Well, the answer is I don't. But it happens to be that in this particular case, it shines a light on us. It shines a light on us and our ancestors and our teachers and Chachamenu Zechrenu Livracha. And as a result of that, it could be quite enlightening. So we're going to begin here on number 1, and each one I give you the number of which one. 4 means the number of cave that it was from, and then Q stands for Qumran, and 169 is the number of scroll, the column, and the line. So this comes from a commentary on the book of Nahum. The book of Nahum is one of the Terei Asar, and in the book of Nahum, they have the same concept I showed you last time, where they quote a pasuk, and then they have a commentary. But their commentary is often not a commentary per se, but it's actually talking about current events. They're very often talking about themselves and what's going on in their day at this time. So there's a pasuk in Nahum that reads, and Hoi Ir Hadamim, woe to the city of blood. This is in Nahum Perek Gimel, pasuk Aleph. Kula Kachash, it's a complete. Kachash means perfidy. That's the way. It means complete backstabbing and that type of thing. Yeah, it's related to that word. And then Perek Meleah. So the Radak tells us that's the pasuk. The pasuk tells us Perek is lashon trikasel, so it means like throwing off. So Perek means that people are going over to other people and robbing them. So you're tearing off the purse. So it's called Perek Meleah. It's full of Perek. It's full of Geneva. So in other words, the Navi Nahum is lamenting that there's a city, a Jewish city, that is so corrupt and is so negative in all this way. Okay. Now, how is it typed by Chazal in terms of what Kufa it's talking to, whatever? Obviously, Chazal gave an interpretation, and the Mefarshim explained exactly which Kufa he was talking about. But these guys do, over here, is they bring the words as follows. They say Psharoi, and they say the meaning of this pasuk is, the implication is, He Ir Ephraim. This goes on the city of Ephraim. And the city of Ephraim, they are the Dorshei HaChalokos. They are the Dorshei. Here we would translate it as the seekers of Chalokos. Chalokos, when we read Tilim, it's a word that comes up, Nizman Lazman, right? What does he say over there? He says in Tilim, Bisfas Chalokos. A few times, Bisfas Chalokos. If you look in the context in Tilim, what does it mean when he says Chalokos? It talks about when there's dishonesty amongst people, it calls it Chalokos. It means Lashon is like slippery. It's like smooth. It's like you're very smooth. It's like too smooth, like you're dishonest smooth. That's what Chalokos is. So Dorshei Chalokos is the people who are looking out for this immoral element of being dishonest in like that type of smooth and cunning way. Al Acheres Hayamim, so it's Ir Ephraim, the Dorshei Chalokos, the end of days, Asher Bekachash Ushkarim Yishalach, who are going to go with disloyalty and with perfidy and with lies. So in other words, they're attaching this pasuk to going on a city of Ephraim, and they have these names. Obviously, we're curious to know what are the meaning of these names, particularly what's Ir Ephraim. What does Ir Ephraim mean, and what does Dorshei HaChalokos mean? And this is something that we'll come to soon. If you go to the next one, number 2, here you have another from the same. It's actually from the same scroll, same column, just a few lines down. And here's another pasuk in Nahum, and the pasuk I took out. And the pesher that they give, the interpretation that they give, is Almate Ephraim. It goes on the people who've gone astray in Ephraim. So again, they come back to Ephraim. Asher b'Talmud Shikram, where in their learning or in their Talmud is their lies. The Lashon Kizveyim, and their language of lies, Usfas Mirma, and their speech that's deceit. Yisu Rabim, many people have gone off, have strayed as a result. These many people consist of malachim and sarim and koyanim, ve'am, and a lot of people, im ger nilva, including the gerim that have joined the people. So there's these real bad strayers in Ephraim who have the lies the lies in Talmud, and they've caused all of the people to go off the deep end. Let's do another one. But before we do another one, so right away you see over here Ephraim. So what's happening over here? It's not too difficult to figure out what the Ephraim reference is. Why? Because how do they refer to themselves? How do they refer to themselves? So look at the next one. This comes from a different one. This comes from a Pesher on Habakkuk, where they write Sharoi. The meaning of this pasuk, and it says something nice in Habakkuk, and they say that it refers to Kol Eisei HaTorah Beveis Yehuda, all the doers of Torah in the house of Yehuda, Sheyatzilem Kel, they don't have a hyphen there, I put it there, God saves them, Mibeis HaMishpat, from judgment, Bavor Amalam, for their good work, Vamunasam, and their belief, B'moira HaTzadek, in the teacher of righteousness. So what's happening over here? There's the good guys, and there's the bad guys. The good guys are called Yehuda. The bad guys are called Ephraim. So right away it becomes immediately obvious what's happening over here. They're referring to two archetypes that you have in Tanakh. Of Yehuda is the legitimate king, and then there's the breakaway. The breakaway is Yeravam ben Nevat, who is from Shevet Ephraim, who created a breakaway in the north. And as we know, the Avodah Zarah, although you had a little in the south, a lot in the south as well, but the Iker Inyan of going away against the Ratzon Hashem was in the north, Yeravam ben Nevat, and his kills and Achav and all those things that were happening over there. And so they're setting themselves up. They're saying, wherever these people are, they're saying, we're Yehuda, and these bad people are Ephraim, representing the wrong side, being on the wrong side of history. Remember, at this time, the 10 tribes have been taken away and haven't returned. The Yidden that are remaining are only Yehuda. But within Yehuda, there's the real Yehuda, and then there's the people who are Derech, Ephraim, are on the wrong side of history. Okay, fine. So that's that. But what I want to do is figure out if we can understand what's this term, Darshei HaChalokos, which you had in the first one, and later Asher B'Talmud Shikram in the second one. So we'll come back to that soon. Let's continue going. More name calling. And number 4, this comes from a different one. Here, again, they're talking about real terrible people who've made real terrible decisions. And they say, all these teachings that we've said, Lo yevinu boyei hachayitz v'tachei tefel. The chayitz is a word in Yecheskel, and it means a wall. The builders of the wall don't understand this. The builders of the wall don't understand it. It's a tachei tefel, and they put plaster on the wall. They don't get it. Ki hoylech ruach, they go with emptiness. The shakel sufais, I'm not entirely sure what that means. Umeitiv adam, and they speak to people lechazev, lying. Ashar achara af keel b'chal adasa, and this caused God to be angry at all of his people. And then again, a few lines later, they say, umisoyne umisayev keel, and God hates his boinei chayitz. God hates the builders of the wall. V'chara apoy bam, and he's upset at them. V'chol ha'hochem achareim, and all those who follow him. So basically, if assuming that we could piece all these pieces together, put all these pieces together, you have people who are wrong, so we're going to call them Ephraim, and they are 3 terms that we want to focus on. Darshei HaChalokos, Asher B'Talmud Shikram, and they're the boinei chayitz, they're the builders of the wall. Okay, so it shouldn't be too difficult to figure out what's going on over here, especially with the background that we did in the previous 2 classes, and when we saw all of the positions, the halachic positions that surface in these scrolls, how time and again, every single time, they have a chance, they're on the wrong side, in the sense that they're going against Chazal, and they're taking Suduki positions and Baitusi positions one after another, so it's not, and given that it's from the same scrolls, so it makes a lot of sense to say that this is them, the Sudukim, or whatever you want to call them. They have Suduki halacha. I don't want to designate them by any one label, but they have Suduki halacha, and they are saying that the other people, and the other people by definition is Chazal, who are wrong, and so therefore they're Ephraim, and they're calling Chazal Darshei HaChalokos, they're calling Chazal Asher B'Talmud Shikram, and they're calling Chazal the builders of the wall. What's happening over here? So let's go to Rambam Hilchos Mamrim Perek Aleph Halacha Beis, and we'll see that when it comes to Torah, there's actually 3 important areas of Torah besides for Torah Shebechsav. All of these are referenced in the pasuk Lo Saser. Zok the Rambam Azot. If you don't follow the teachings of Chazal, of the sages, Over beloisa say it's alav shenamar, as the pasuk says, loisasur mikol adavar asher yagidul chayam in the smell. Don't stray to the right or to the left from anything that they tell you. Okay, so what does it mean? What does it mean that they tell you? What is this referring to? So the Rambam says there are three categories for this. Category 1, echad dvarim shalam do'etam mepi hashmua. These are the things that Chazal learned it in the sense that they heard it. That's the oral Torah. In other words, this is what's sometimes called halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Sometimes it's called Kabbalah. This is the area of Torah where the Eibusher told Moshe Rabbeinu that, by the way, when I say Kshat Moshe Adecha, I mean the following, the basics of what the mitzvah is. So that was passed down orally from generation to generation. So you need to listen to Chazal about what that tradition is. That's one thing. But that's not the whole Torah Sheba'al Peh. There's another area. Here it's not tradition. Here is using their mind. With one of the midoy sha'atoira nidreshes b'hem. We'll stress the word nidreshes right now. What is this word nidreshes? V'darash. What does it mean to be darshan? A lot of times we think of the word a drasha and we think of in the context of a speech. But it's not what does a shoyrish in the word drasha mean? V'darashta v'chakarta heitev. Drasha means investigate. So what does investigating have to do with Torah? Yeah, because Eibusher gave a Torah with 13 principles, and the way you figure out what the halacha is by making an investigation. You have to see, is there a kal v'chomer, is it a good kal v'chomer, is it not a good kal v'chomer, does it make sense, can I slug it up? That's a v'darashta. You have to it's not obvious, it doesn't come automatic, you have to use your brain, you have to investigate, so we call it a drasha. So that's the second category. And the Chazal think that this is what the meaning of the pasuk is, so this is what you need to do. Sometimes, when we think about Torah Sheba'al Peh, we kind of forget to realize that there's actually different categories. So far we mentioned two. One is, again, the oral things given to Moshe Rabbeinu, the basics of each mitzvah. I'll tell you, as the Rambam says, you can't imagine the Eibusher told Moshe Rabbeinu, what does that mean? I don't know. But to figure it out. If he gave those words, you had to tell him what it means. So a basic definition he had to have given, and that's the first category over here, mipi hashmua. But then you come up with a Gemara and wants to discuss what's the din if you're a chatzi shivcha and a chatzi ben choyrin, do you have the chiyuv to put on tefillin and not put on tefillin? Okay, so lav dafke, that was given to Moshe, the Eibusher to Moshe, and passed down orally. That you relied on the Yud Gimel Midas, that the Eibusher says, I'm hiding the answers in the text. The Eibusher is infinite, so you can put an infinite number of answers in the text, and you'll figure it out using the Yud Gimel Midas, which is what the Gemara is doing. So that's the second category of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Then there's a third category. What's the third category? Then there's the things that they made. Siyag means a fence around the Torah. In accordance with the time, right? So these are many of the halachas where we know Chazal say Muksa on Shabbos, we're saying no, or you can't carry in a chaser if you don't put an Erev Chatzeres or Chadayim. Many of these dinim, Erev Tavshil, many of these dinim, where the Chachamim are saying that they have a specific reason, a concern that they have chicken and milk. We don't want people to eat because we're afraid it's going to lead to eating Basar B'chalav, V'chadayim. And these are called Gzeres, Takonis, and Minhagos. Kol echad ve'echad me'elu hashloish advarim. All three of these mitzvahs hasei lishmayalan. There's a mitzvah to hear, to listen to them, and it's a lav to not listen to them. Okay, so ebazoi. So here we need to ask ourselves: is it possible to say? Hold on a second. So if we have these, and now you have to remember, we believe, we argue, and we say that all of these things go all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu. So in other words, the term midoy sha'atoira nidreshes b'hem. That's not a new term. That's a term that goes all the way back. Okay, in number 6, the Sifra says, Rabbi Yishmael lo'emer b'shloishes mitzvah Torah nidreshes. It's 13 midas, Torah nidreshes. And before him, Hillel spoke about other midos, also using the same word, nidreshes. Okay, now we know the ones who don't like us, use the words dorshe hachalokos. Dorshe hachalokos. The word dorshe. Dorshe. So dorshe just can mean the seekers, right? They seek lies. But the question is, it's possible everyone can reach their own conclusion. But is it shaykh to say that Dorshe HaChalakis is their word, they're making fun of our word? Why? Because they don't believe in our word. Why? Because they don't believe in that whole system. They don't believe in the system of Drash. They don't believe in the three things that the Rambam tells you need to believe. They don't believe in all three of them, l'chayra. And definitely not the last two. They didn't believe that you could make Midish Atar in the Drash of them. They rejected this whole approach, which is why they have all the Tzeduki Halacha, which is different. So they're against Drash. So if they're against Drash, then maybe when they say Darshe HaChalakos, the word Darshe is being used intentionally as in, lies, the Chalakos, the lies of Darshe, of Inyanim, of Medrash, because they're against Medrash. If you want to go further, that's one level. If you want to go a little further, and get a little more creative, you could say, and what does the word Chalakos sound like? Chalakos sounds like the word halachis. It's a very similar word. So Darshe halachis, the investigators who use Darash to derive new halachis, but really it's not halachis, it's chalakis, it's lies, so maybe the shaykh. Could anyone know for sure? It's not shaykh to know for sure. It's definitely an intriguing possibility. That's Benegea, that term of Darshe halachis. Now, Benegea asher betalmud shikram, so we need to know the following. The word Talmud, sometimes we think is a book. There's a book on the shelf that's called Talmud. The emphasis is Talmud's not also Mishnah. So you could buy a Mishnah. Mishnah is not only a book. Mishnah is a methodology in learning. And Talmud is a methodology in learning. Where do you see that? Because we use terms Mishnah before the Mishnah was written. And we use terms Talmud before the Talmud was written. Okay. So where do we see that? The Gemara in Sukkah Daf Chav Ches says as follows. Amru Olav Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who lived and passed away before the Mishnah was written. What did he say about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai? Shelo yiniach mikra. He didn't not learn any pasuk, Mishnah, Gemara, Halachis, and Agadas. So I want to focus on the term Mishnah. What does it mean, Mishnah? It's before Mishnah. Yeah, but it's the methodology of Mishnah. What's the methodology of Mishnah? Mishnah, what does Mishnah mean? Vishinantam. What's Vishinantam? Shinantam means repeated learning. Why repeated learning? Because there's halachas you need to remember, because you're not allowed to write it down, so you need to learn it me'apamim. So that whole methodology of learning, those dinim, Rabbi Yochanan was an expert in that school of learning, in the school of learning of Mishnah. What does it mean, Talmud? So Rashi recognizes, by the way, it doesn't say Gemara. Those who have taken the previous classes, you know that Gemara never says in Gemara. Gemara originally said Talmud, and Gemara is put in by the censor later. Okay, you'll see that's going to be important for what we're trying to do here. Rashi is what? What does it mean? He learned the whole Talmud? Rabbi Yochanan, it sounds anachronistic. Rabbi Yochanan exactly learned the whole Talmud. So Rashi says Talmud Zui Svara. You want to know what Talmud is? Talmud is logic. Which is not. Mishnah is repeat memorization. That's what Mishnah is, repeated memorization. Talmud is logic. Because the later Tanoim, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was one of them, was medaktikim b'divrei rishonim hastumim. They used to analyze the words of the Tanoim, and that were not so clear. Lefarsham, to explain them, and to give them an explanation. This is what the Amoraim did later to the words of the Tanoim. Explaining the words of the Tanoim that came before them. V'kavu bahen Talmud, and they made from this a Talmud. So this type of analysis, in where you took earlier rabbi's words and said, what did he mean? Why? What is it similar to? Can I ask a question on it? Can I slug it up? Can I justify it? How do I apply it to new cases? Any of that type of logic or reasoning that you did at any point in history, that is called Talmud, or as it says here, Nikra Shas, but that too, the censorship used to say here, Nikra Talmud. Fine. So now that we know that this is Talmud and this is the methodology of Talmud, so is it aufgefragt, come back to them where they say Asher b'Talmud Shikram? We know they don't like Talmud. They're against the whole process of Svara. The whole thing is off the table for them. Maybe they mean that when they say Talmud, they may not just mean Meloshin Talmud as in learning. They may actually mean the methodology of Chazal b'Negea Talmud. It's definitely an intriguing possibility. And then when you come to the third one, the third name that we saw them using was the builders of the wall. This one is pretty easy to do. If you go to Yecheskel here, you see first the Lashon HaPasuk. It's talking about false prophets here. And the Navi in Yecheskel in text 9 says, Yadi el Neviim, I'm going to punish the Neviim, HaChoizim Shav, who see falsehoods, VaKoismim Kazav, and the magicians who make lies, Yanu Vayan, because Hitu es Ami, these false prophets have tricked my people, the Jewish people, Lamar, to say Shalom, that things are going to be peaceful, everything is going to be good, you have no reason to worry about God's punishment, but the MS is ve'ein shalom, that there isn't going to be peace, there is going to be a punishment. And so these false, in other words, the false prophets, how do they get a following? How do you get a following? You make people feel good. By the way, it's just something to think about. How are they able to get a following? Because they told people it's going to be okay, calm, it's going to be fine. So if you make people feel good, even if you have nothing to sell, but even if you're false, but if you make people feel good, you can make a lot of money. So that's something to think about. So this who by nechayitz, they're building a wall. But it's being made with plaster. So the Mefarshim explain what's happening here is the Nevi'im were building a wall. In other words, saying you're protected. You have a chayitz, but really it's, the plaster was a weak tafel. It's a bad type of plaster that you're putting up. So it looks like you're safe because you have a wall. The emes is there's no wall over here. This is how the Mefarshim tell us that this is the meaning in Yecheskel. Okay, Eibazoi, we have the right to have a look at the Mishnah office where it says through the Anshe Knesset had the Nevi'im told the Anshe Knesset Agdoila, and there's two ways of learning this. We're going to go with the way Abarbanel learns it for this purpose. He says that Heim Amru Shloisha Dvarim, the Nevi'im told Anshe Knesset Agdoila three things: have a misunim badin, be patient in din. V'hem midu talmidim hari, have a lot of students for asus yog la Torah, and make a fence around the Torah. No. So we think that Chazal, the Rebbe spoke about this, is during Bayis Sheni, most of the Syogim are during Bayis Sheni, which is Mamish the period that we're talking about. Okay? So we don't think that the words Asus, and this is Asus Yog La Torah, these are words that were said in the beginning of Bayis Sheni, which the Rebbe learns. Why here? Because it was a Yerida, because Bayis Sheni and a Yerida. So when it's dark, you need to put fences around manholes. When it's light, you don't need to. Everyone sees it, everyone says. But if it's dark, there's no Gilei Likus, so you need to put up fences around it, and this is why ribui dinim about the gzeiros Rabbanan to protect Yidden from violating Isurim was made during this time. So Eibazoi, is it crazy to suggest that when they call the people who we know are Chazal, and they're calling them builders of the wall, maybe this is what they're referring to? So in other words, there are three areas of Torah Shabbat Peh. One, Mipi Hashmua, the other one is Drasha, the other one is the builders of the wall, and we find, the other one is Siyag L'Torah, the Rambam said, and we find them using language that seems to indicate that the last two categories they didn't agree with at all. The last two. The first, we don't have anything. But in the last two categories, they're saying we don't agree with at all. So that's a very interesting thing. And it then gives us a deeper understanding what's happening over here. You have people who accept Talmud, who accept Drash, and this is part of their Yiddishkeit. You have people who are rejecting that. You have people who are accepting the Asus Yog, and you have the people who are rejecting that entire process. So sometimes it's interesting to hear about yourself from the other side, and I think that's what's happening over here. I think we're learning about ourselves and our ancestors and what we believe in from the people who lost the war. They lost the war because they were wrong, and ultimately truth prevailed. Now the emes is that Abarbanel gives us a reading of this Mishnah and Ovis that would make all three of the teachings relevant to what we're talking about. But Pashtus, when we learn Havim Misunim Badin, what do we learn it? We learn it Misunim Badin when Reuven comes to you and he says Hashem and punch him in the face, Chas v'Shalom, so you're adjudicating the case. Don't rush, go slow, right? And then what? Tamudi Tamudim Harbe? Yeah, you're going to be a teacher, have a lot of students. And then Asus Yog La Torah is, right? So the question is, what's the connection between these three? Ma Kesher. It's like, don't rush the judgment, have a lot of students, and make a fence around Torah. It sounds so random. So many Mefarshim explain what the kesher is between these. The Abarbanel, it's a very interesting pshat. He says that all three of these are related. What happened is, he explains as follows. The Nevi'im are the ones who said it. The Nevi'im were very holy, special people. Now they didn't paskin, and they were not allowed to paskin a din based on nevuah. We'll see soon more about that. Psak could never be done based on nevuah. That's not how we paskin. Moshe Rabbeinu could paskin based on nevuah, and after that, over. You can't paskin based on nevuah. So how do you paskin? Paskin based on the things we were talking about, logic, seichel, yud gimel midrash, hatar nidrashas, and things like that. Alpha became the Nevi'im were better than the Chachamim that would come later. Why? Because at the end of the day, as the Rambam says, to be a Navi, you need to be a very, very special person. So if you're on a madrega that you're able to be a Navi, it stands to reason that you're going to have very good midrash hatar nidrashas. You're going to be very, very good at arriving at a psak din, and you're going to be able to do it rather quickly. You'll be able to do it rather quickly. The Nevi'im saw that they're the last generation of Nevuah, and they saw that Nevuah is going away, so they tell the next generation, listen, don't copy us in the way we did it. Why? Because we were on a higher madrega. So when a new Shaila came before us, within 10 minutes we sat down and we figured it out. Did we use Nevuah? No, we didn't use Nevuah because you're not allowed to use Nevuah. We used our Seichel. But at the end of the day, because we had Nevuah, so it powered our Seichel, and we're able to come to quick conclusions. But now that the Nevuah is going away, now there's going to be a Hela Mahasar and Alikos, you're not going to have that power. So therefore, you're going to be relying on your Seichel, and it's going to take a longer time. Don't worry, have a Misunim Badin. and he learns that din is not talking about a young guy came to another guy in front of you and he sued him, so that's not what we're talking, not talking about a din Torah. Having mitzunim din is b'chlal, the whole process, how to run a Sanhedrin, even by deriving a new law. Having mitzunim din. In fact, we learn Gemara, we see, he uses all the time. He uses the term din when you're deriving something. Din doesn't only mean a din Torah. Din could mean a gal v'aloi dinhu. Right? The Gemara says, what's that? What's v'aloi dinhu? V'aloi dinhu is the Gemara is employing kal v'chomer. So have a mitzunim but din. Go slow in your din because it took us 2 hours. It's going to take you guys 10 hours. Then they said hamidu tamidim harbe. You need to have a lot of students. Why? For the same reason. Because now you're a lower madrega. You're using a seichel. If you have 2 guys in the room trying to figure it out, you'll do a much better job if you have 10. And a much better job if you have 20, and a much better job if you have 40. The more brains in the room, the better halachic conclusion you'll reach. And asus yagla Torah, and again, make yourself very careful, extra layers, and there's different ways of understanding why we want the extra layers from Chazal, but one of them is that if you create the extra layer, then even if you make a mistake in din, but you didn't touch the core of what the Torah was. So this is how Abarbanel explains it. So you could say that really the whole process, that the whole Torah Sheba'al Peh is really both parts is in this first mission in Avos. Both the Gdorim and the Siyagim, which is there clearly, but also the inyan of Drasha is also there. The way Chazal derives new dinim is also over there in the beginning of Avos, and this was the motto for the Anshe Knesset Hagdola, and this is the thing that made the other guys mad. It's the type of thing that they didn't like. Okay. Now the question becomes, you have to ask yourself a question like this. It's impossible to apply Torah without Torah Sheba'al Peh. It's not shaykh. You can't run a society al pi Torah without having firstly, even din and darabanan. How could you not? You need to have a Rav looks and he says, by the way, I think that now we need to make a din because of a certain circumstance. How could you have Yiddishkeit without that? And definitely, how can you have Yiddishkeit without looking at the Torah and deriving new dinim? How is it a living and breathing thing? How's it shaykh? In other words, how's it shaykh to have, if there were people who actually lived and believed by this, what was their operating system? Was it just a joke? But how did they actually go about and learn and touch the Torah and apply the Torah and new questions came up? How were they able to do this? So we don't know the answer. And even if we come up with an answer, we shouldn't but we shouldn't suggest that this is the answer for all of the tzedukkim. But I do think we have at least one answer for how it worked for this particular group of people. Why? Early on the first page, I showed you, it spoke about that the good people have emunah b'moira hatzedek. The good people have belief in the moira hatzedek, in the teacher of justice, the teacher of righteousness. And that is last week I showed you, remember the Yom Kippur thing? Remember the Yom Kippur showdown? What happened there? The bad guy, the bad kohen, came to the place to fight with the Moira Tzedek, that same language, a different scroll using the same term of the Moira Tzedek. Okay, it could be that this is going to play a role in what was going on over there. Look at number 12, and you'll see something very interesting in number 12. Here it talks again, they're talking about the good people, the people who are on the right side of history. They write, we hold on to the mitzvahs of Hashem, Asher noisru mehem, the people who have remained, who have holding on to the mitzvahs of God. Heikim keil is brisei liyisrael, so God made His bris ad olam forever. Legales lahem nistoros, to reveal to them secrets. Asher tov on kol Yisrael, that all Jews have made mistakes in. Shabbos es kotchay b'negei Shabbos, u'mayah de kveidem b'negei Yom Tif, edus tzidkoi, the edus, the mitzvahs, v'darchei amitoi v'chefsei ritzoyin. So in other words, Hashem, they're writing over here that God is making a covenant with them to reveal to them secrets about the matters that all the Jews are making mistakes in, but again, Shabbos and Yom Tov. Put Shabbos aside, we know Yom Tov. They definitely believe that we were making a big mistake when it came to Yom Tov, as we saw. And they're saying that God revealed to them secrets. Well, what does that start to sound like? What does it start to sound like when you hear Legalis and Nistoris? That's actually a different way of paskening, it sounds like, which is Ruach HaKodesh, a Navur, or something like that. It definitely sounds from this particular passage that way. Go further, turn to the next page, on page 4. This is from another one of these commentaries, where they take a pasuk and they write, and this one they write, Sharoi, Hadavar, the meaning of this pasuk is al haboigdim, it's on the rebels, in ish hakazav, with the person of lies, ki lo yaminu b'divrei moiret tzedakah, they did not believe in the words of the teacher of righteousness, mi pikel, from the mouth of God. So here again, you're seeing, it sounds like this one is putting the two together. We had there's a moiret tzedek, and we had that there is revealing the secrets, and here we have God revealing the secrets to the moiret tzedek, and the bad guys aren't following that. And you have this again in 1QH, in number 14. This one says, Vehema melite kazav. You see that again and again they use the word lies and lying and lying. It's so often they use those words. So melite kazav v'choyze remia, the seers of falsehood. Zamula alai blial, they planned on me blial. This whole thing is written in the tone, in the language that the Moiret Tzedek is speaking. Lahamer Torahcha, to change your Torah. Asher shanansa belibi, that you bilevavi, that you taught to my heart. B'chalakos, and they changed it for chalakos. We know what chalakos is. La'amcha, to your people. So here again, you see, God is communicating to the Moiret Tzedek in his heart. In his heart. So you put this together, and nothing is for sure, but a reasonable theory can be created that they had a different system. They had a different system. And the system was, we have a way of, you have a shaila, a new shaila, you have a chetzi eved and a chetzi ben choyr, and what's going to be the din? No problem. You go to the Moiret Tzedek, whoever this guy was, and he's going to have a Ruach HaKodesh moment, and whatever it is, and he's going to tell you it's Ruach HaKodesh. Don't kal v'chomer me, don't zera shava me, and whatever, and don't make me walls, don't make me building. He talks everything straight from God. Asus Yagla Torah is, it's your own idea. Asus Yagla Torah is your own idea. No. From him, everything's straight from the source. He's coming straight from the source. And indeed we know that Chazal battled against the validity of this idea. In other words, we know there's so many passages of Chazal that are like, no, you're not allowed to do that, we don't believe in that. Let's see some examples. The Gemara in Tzmura has a brayso that says as follows. 3,000 halachis were forgotten in the days of Moshe Rabbeinu. It would be very interesting to know what these halachas were. The Yidden were mourning so much and so deeply that these halachas were forgotten. Okay, they recovered after Shiva. Amr Leili Yeshua, they told Yeshua, Sha'al! What they meant by that is, ask God. They were used to going to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu would turn and ask God. So Yeshua Sha'al, Amr Lahem, he said, Lei Bashamaymi. The pasuk says that Torah is Lei Bashamayim. What is it normal? The pshat in Parshat Nitzavim when it says this? What does it mean? What it means in Pshutai is that Torah is doable. It's reachable. You could do it. Don't say it's too far. Don't say it's too difficult. The Chayich, you could do Torah. Lei Bashamayim. But he darshan the pasuk. He darshan Lei Bashamayim is that you're not allowed to get a halachic answer from Ruach HaKodesh. You're not allowed to get a halachic answer from Nevuah. Okay, so they didn't have the answer. So then there's a few generations later, you have Shmuel Hanavi. They're like, okay, we'll try with him. Amru Leilu Shmuel, they came to Shmuel and they said, Sha'al, ask. Amalehem, so he said, Eila HaMitzvahs. It says toward the end, the Sefer Devarim, Moshe finishes a long speech giving a lot of mitzvahs to the Yidden, and then the pasuk ends off, the perek ends off saying, these are the mitzvahs that God gives. So we darshan, Eila HaMitzvahs, these are the mitzvahs, and nothing more. What does it mean, nothing more? Why not nothing more? So Moshe gave Taryag, and then Yeshua is going to give Taryad. The next one. No. Eila mitzvahs. These are the mitzvahs. She'ein hanavi rashai lechadesh davar me'ata. Because from now on, the book is closed. There is no more adding additional mitzvahs. So you want me to come and turn to the Eibishter and ask? No. Eila mitzvahs. I can't go back. I can't come and find these halachas. They don't exist, and we can't add these dinim now. Now the Marsha has an interesting explanation. He wants to know how come Yeshua said Loi Bashamaymi and Shmuel said a different word. It's the same question. It was the same question. Shmuel said Loi Bashamaymi and Yeshua said Loi Bashamaymi and Shmuel said Eila Mitzvahs. He explains like this. Yeshua, it wasn't something new. Yeshua learned the 3,000 halachas. He heard it from Moshe, like all other Yidden. So he couldn't come and say, oh no, but Eila mitzvahs, and not new ones. What do you mean not new ones? These 3,000 were part of the Eila that he had heard. And Alpha B'Kain, he was saying, even though it's part of the Eila mitzvahs, But you're not allowed to access that information that we once knew. You can't turn to the heavens. For Shmuel never heard it. Shmuel never heard those halachas. He never heard those halachas, so for him it's not part of the Eila mitzvahs. So for him he brought another pasuk. He brought the pasuk Eila that you're not allowed to do it because there's a number of mitzvahs and you can't add. Al Kapanim, what do you see in this teaching? Why do you have this teaching? What is the message of this teaching? And why was this teaching passed down and taught? Like, why isn't it Negeah? Okay, so it happened. Why was it Negeah that it was passed down through all the generations and they wrote this down into the Shas? Because it was an important thing to keep on, to hold on to. It was an important teaching. Why? L'hoitzi, from people who didn't believe this way. Okay. Now the Maharsha ends off by saying, Umahai Taima, if you look at 16 at the end, he says, Umahai Taima Amrinam Ba'alma. This is why we say Chacham Adif Menavi. This is a mighty line. The Gemara says a Chacham is better than a Navi. How can you say that? Navi is the Hechta Madrege. So Maharsha says no. Chacham Adif Menavi. A Chacham, if you're wise, you could do a Kal V'chomer, you could paskin a din. A Navi can't paskin a din. So Chacham Adif Menavi. So Chazal are saying a Chacham is better than a Navi. Okay, so in other words, you had people running around saying, by the way, we're Nevi'im. Chazal said, yeah, Yoshakayach, a Chacham Adif min Navi, because a Navi you can paskin dinim, and a Chacham can paskin dinim. Here's the Gemara in Baba Basra, it's an interesting Gemara. The Chacham Adif min Navi. How do I know? Zak the Gemara, Shenemar, the Navi levav Chachma. This is a very interesting drasha. Why? Because the pasuk, what it's saying is, the Navi levav Chachma, Pshat means, bring us a wise heart. Bring me wisdom. In other words, you're asking God for wisdom. That's what the Navi levav Chachma is. Okay, but Chazal types it, the Navi, Levav Chachma has a heart, has a brain. Chazal use it interchangeably. Have Chachma like a Chacham. So in other words, the Chacham is the paradigm, and we're saying a Navi is like a Chacham. So me nitle b'mi, who are you comparing to whom? Have a Yemer Katan nitle b'gadol. So you compare the little guy to the big guy. So we're comparing the Navi. So the Chacham is right that the Chacham is better than the Navi.
Isn't this like to a certain extent invalidating the concept of a Navi at a time when the Yidden were constantly having real Nevi'im?
Yeah, but the Nevi'im weren't allowed to teach dinim from their Nevuah.
I know it's kind of like taking away any authority that... No?
Yeah, I mean, some of the Nevi'im wore both hats. Some of the Nevi'im, you came to them 3 o'clock, as we learned earlier from the Barbanel, they could be doing Kal V'chomer Gzeir Shava for you. You came back 4 o'clock, and they're telling you they're doing different Nevi'im, that Koy Amar Hashem, that if you don't do tshuva right now, you're going to get... Right? So some did both. Some did both. Some clearly didn't do both, and some did one or the other. These are two. There's different. We in Judaism we have separation of power. There's Keser, Malchus. What is it? We say the Shloshik Sarim, but Nevuah is not one of them, right? It says Keser, Torah, Keser, Melucha, and Keser Kahuna. 3. There is a 4th crown. These are separate crowns. There's some people. Not everyone has everything. Okay. Now the Gemara in Baba Basra says another interesting teaching that's putting down Nevi'us. Look what the Gemara says. Tanya Nam Yochi, there's a brayta. If someone tells his chaver, minos, a portion bekerem of a vineyard, ani moicharlach, and they made up a price. What? What are they selling? A portion. So how much do I need to give you? How much is part of the sale? Sumchas Omer, so the Tana Sumchas says, Alivchas Megimar Kavim, very minimum, you're talking about 30 Kavim. Okay, Rabbi Yossi doesn't like that. So Amar Rabbi Yossi, Ein Elu Ela Divrei Nevi'us. That's only Nevi'us. Zok Tosfos, Loi L'Shavach Gomer. That's not a praise. Ala Kaloimar, what he's doing is Shomer B'loi Tam. You're saying Narishkeit. So in other words, Nevi'us. What does it mean? Why is Nevi'us Narishkeit? Nevi'us Chas V'Shalom is not Narishkeit. It's one of the Yesodei Adas. Yeah, Yesodei Adas if you're using it in the right way. But when it comes to halacha, he's giving me Nevi'us. So then you're using the wrong methodology. The methodology of Tam, Drasha, that's what we believe in. The methodology of the Kumps and the Zoks, Gimel Kavim, Yoshakayach, it doesn't make any sense. That's a Nevuah. And so Chazal will use that word. Nevi'us is like, we don't like that. We don't do that. It's the wrong type of thing for having in the halachic conversation.
It's a similar thing with Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shur.
Yeah. The famous Gemara in Bava Metzia that you can invoke here, that where Rabbi Elazar tried to paskin a din and show that he's right based on doing miracles, and then on a baskel, and there's a baskel comes said that this guy's always right, Rabbi Elazar is always right. So Rabbi Shua invoked this pasuk and said, Loi Bashamayim. That's another very famous teaching that underscores this idea that that's not how we paskin. I think an argument can even be made that the famous Yagaiti is also related to this. The Gemara Megillah says, Im Yomer Adam, if a person tells you Yagaiti, but I didn't find, Al Tamim. Lo yagaiti umatzasi. I didn't heard of it, but I found. Also al tamin. Yagaiti umatzasi tamin. Then the Gemara adds, Hani mili, what are we talking about? B'divrei Torah. Not an other inyan. Okay, it's interesting because the Rebbe uses this pasuk as a model for life, but it's not our subject right now. The Gemara says, Hani mili b'divrei Torah. We're talking about when it comes to inyanim of Torah. So, listen to the following interesting thought. If you're Chazal and you're saying you can get all the answers through Yud Gimel Midrash HaTorah and the Drashas Pan, so you have to say Yogaiti V'Loi Motzasi Al Tamin. Don't put right. They would say, what do you mean? You're going to hurry? You're going to you're not going to be able to find all the answers. You're going to hurry, but you're not going to get all the answers. We with our Nevi'as are going to. No. We say Yogaiti. If you hurry, if you put in the work using Kal V'Chomer Gzei Shava Binyan Av, you're going to find it. And if you say you didn't find the answer, I don't believe you. In other words, we believe you could always come to the answer. On the other hand, we say, Lo yagaiti, if I didn't hear but ich bin amoydet tzedek, umatzasi, and God revealed himself to me, I didn't hear but he revealed himself, I know the answer, Al Tamin, don't believe it. And the Gemara says, talking about Divrei Torah, it could even be this teaching's related to this larger sugya. Now, why? Why? What's wrong with their system? Maybe it makes sense. Continue. Moshe Rabbeinu worked that way, so it should continue. Why is it that the first generation you had Indian of Gilim Umayla, and then after that we said we're cutting it off. So there's two classic explanations, and then you have from the Rebbe. So the classic explanations go like this. Abarbanel says a very interesting thought. Let's read together number 21. Shtei Tazov. If the Nevi'im would give us an explanation of when we're not sure how to interpret the Torah, so then the Chachamim would weaken their investigation of Torah, and they would weaken their learning of Torah and their understanding of it. And they wouldn't show up in the Beis Medrash every day. And they wouldn't have it on their own to understand its secrets, because they were relying on relying on the explanations of the Nevi'im and on their psak. Even if they do understand something, even when they do understand, if they do investigate, they're going to have a suffix. They're going to like, I don't know if this is right. It's like, when the doctor's like, I looked, but I'd rather do an X-ray also. It's like, if you have the Navi option, so why should I look so hard? And they're not going to rely on themselves. In other words, Abarbanel is saying an amazing thing here. What do we want? We want the answer, or we want the process? People say it's not about the answer; it's about the process. Abarbanel doesn't want the answer. We don't learn Torah for the answer. Also, we need to know we need to know that. But that's not really what Torah is all about, right? What does Alter Rebbe say in Perek Hey and Tanya? That even if Loi Hoya V'Loi Nivra, the case is never going to come up, we still learn it, we still discuss it. Why? Because Torah is about connecting with God. How do you connect with God? Using your Chachmah. But if all the answers, at the end of the day, we all know. When you need a paskin, you hareve. Okay, but the argument can be made. That's just two things happen. You're helping a Jewish person who needs a psak, but really what's also happening is that now you're Pashat Hareving, and now you have a Yichud Nifla with the Eibishter that's much deeper than anything else. Okay, if you had a Navi to call up, so that whole Haravanya would have never happened. So again, if you're interested in the bottom line answer, there's nothing wrong with the Navi. But if you're interested in the relationship of Torah and Haravanya and Torah is an end in itself, so then we don't want the Navi Arois. I love that line. When they don't even have a Mavi, they say, in explaining Torah and mitzvahs. They're going to gather the courage and the strength. And they're going to do more and more and more. And then they'll rely on their conclusions because they won't have anything to rely on other than their good seichel. So that's Abarbanel's explanation. Sofer has a beer that's more about protecting the faith, protecting Judaism from going off the rails. Sofer writes that if you don't have this rule, then Judaism would have been completely lost. What does he say? The Nekuda of Leba Shamayim, these two dinim, and the Navi cannot teach new dinim. This is Yisoid v'shoyrish kol ha-Torah kula. This is the foundation of everything. The ilav hachi, if you didn't have this rule, ein kan Torah klal, you have no Torah. Why? I don't know why we adopted the custom of doing Tezayin instead of Yud Vav. I like this better. Tezvav, I understand. We don't want to have Yud and Hey, so we do Tezvav instead. But I never understood why we continued with that. So this is, I like the Sam Sefer. Kuf Yud Vav Amid Beis. The Amar, Hahumina, the Gemara has in Shabbos like this. Hamin, a sectarian, said as follows. From the day that Golus happened, the Torah of Moshe was taken away, God forbid, and a second Torah was given. It's clear from the Gemara there is talking about an early Christian who, this is one of their big talking points, that yes, the Torah was true, but Chas v'Shalom has an end date, and now there's a new Torah. And what's the backing for that? Guy had a vision. He had a vision. He had a prophecy. No. So if prophecy is a valid way in how to live your life, go argue with him. Now what are you going to tell him? You say, well, no, that prophecy, I'm not listening. It's like, no, we don't do prophecy. It's like, it's not even part of the... So if you're a Yid who every day you call up the prophet to know what you should do, so then when the prophet comes and says, by the way, throw the whole thing out, yeah, it's at least a conversation. Maybe the answer will be no, but it's at least a conversation. But if prophecy doesn't go into the whole conversation on how we do it, so he tells you to throw out Torah. We don't live our lives based on a Navi. All he could do is be ma'ayir us and tell us a punishment is coming or those types of things, but not in psak, not how to live. There's an exception. Last week's Haftorah, Eliyahu Navi, Hayra Asha, the Rambam is ma'ayir on it. If they tell you that for a few minutes or whatever, that's an exception. Other than that, and maybe he'll even prove his nevius by making miracles, whether he does it by tricks or by kishuf. The Navi Ashmeelu Asakain. This is what the prophet of the Muslims did. He didn't want to write open against Christianity there. So he's Maram, the Gemara in Shabbos, clearly a Christian, but Sam Sefer didn't want to speak about that living in that country. Okay, the Shabtai Tzvi Tepa Grucha V'Nishmasai Omar. What did he say? So here it's talking about the famous person who claimed that he's Moshiach sometime in the 17th century. But in addition to doing that, he also said Shenishapchu Amitzvos the Nasume Asay in Lavin. He said every Asay is a Lav, and Malav and Asay, and every Lav is an Asay. Right? They went around saying the different whatever, making different Isurim. And he said, but God told him. So now go argue with him. God told him. Even if we don't throw out the entire Torah, every mitzvah is going to get harmed. Everyone's going to say, I had a dream, I think he means chela. And he's going to say like this, and Torah would be weakened. And so therefore, this is his explanation. So very different. Sam Sefer is really more balabatish. Abarbanel is a little more like Chassidus almost. You want to protect Judaism, get rid of the prophet. In terms of psak. If you want to have a get rid of it. But then Abarbanel says Tifir. We don't just want the final answer. We want to have the process. We want to have the process as well. So that would explain why Chazal were so adamant about this, and this is why the Eibusher set up the system to be this way. And here you had the people who didn't like it. You could understand why they didn't like it. It definitely feels less holy. When you're using your Seichel and your Harimi and Gemara, and it doesn't feel holy. It doesn't. You have that. You come to the mystic who told you what God wants. It feels a lot holier. And so this may be one of the reasons, or where they end up having this type of thing, which is why what bothers them. How could you imagine Talmud? You crazy? Talmud Shikram. Drash, these things, these terms probably made them nauseous. They probably hated these terms. The building, the wall, these things they probably hated because it didn't go through their process and how they wanted things to work. Okay, happens to be that if we are right now, let's look back at the following. First, what do we know about Saduk Baitzusim? We know they don't accept Teresh Baal Peh. We knew that before we walked into the room, before learning these things. So in other words, they only accept Torah Shabbat. Fine. But now let's dig a little deeper. If we're right over here, at least this group of people, they were so enamored. To go a little deeper, Torah Shabbat was Al Smo Maila, right? So they wanted that the hemshech should also be al Salamayla. Number one. Number two, we spoke about the calendar last week. What happened with the calendar last week? There's no more Mata Lamayla. There's no more Mata Lamayla. It's all set. There's no Kfiyas HaChodesh. It's all set from the beginning of time and how it's going to be. So in other words, what's the commonality between what we're learning now and what we learned last time? Is that the idea that human beings play a significant role in how things work, they don't like that. They don't like that idea that human beings play a significant role in how. So therefore, no, you're not Kaveh the Chodesh, you're not Kaveh the Shana, you're not Kaveh these types of things. And no drushes, and no, it's all coming top down. So it's very interesting. The Rebbe explains a Sikha, where the Rebbe actually gives a little more of an oimek into this area of their shitta about being top down versus our shitta about being momata lamayla. So let's have a look. This is a very, very geshmak Sikha. If you have the ability to learn the whole thing, I highly recommend this. The first Sikha in Chelik Yutes. The Rebbe says as follows: Di baitusum gloiben nor in Torah shebeksav nit in Torah shebal peh. The chilik zwischen Torah shebeksav and Torah shebal peh is, what's the difference? Torah shebeksav HaKadosh Baruch Hu Oimer Moshe Kosev, God writes, God says, and Moshe wrote, he's gegeben geworden in ganzem Umayl. Torah shebal peh is in Yonah, wie Torah ist herabgekommen bei Avona v'Atzaga, diese werden is Gala und übergegeben durch die Chachmei Yisrael shebechol dor v'dor, where how it's revealed and passed down by the Chachamim. Und in ihr dar sein la'afashal, you need to add, der loimid, the learner, darf heart of it mit sein Seichel, you have to heart of it with your Seichel, so oifzahn mechad sein in Torah. To make a chiddush. In other words, they halten as Torah is nor dos as kumt begalim amayla. Torah could only be what's begalim amayla. This is what the Rebbe says. So now we can add, not that I'm adding to this, but you can add, Torah begalim amayla, and here you have this group that says, and the continuation of how to live as a Jew also all comes momayla. Then the Rebbe says the following. The Rebbe says you can connect this to why they insist that Atzeres must always be a Sunday, which we also saw last time. What Shvu, right? If the Hanafas HaOmer is always a Sunday, Shvuos is always, Atzeres is always a Sunday. Why? Und das ist die Teile von den Batusim, als Atzeres beantwortet ist Achar Shabbos. Because it has to be noch a Tag, welch is on Amol v'Yegia, nor Tainuk, v'Gitas Momayla. The Rebbe is explaining here is, because you now have a proper Achana. So what's the proper Achana for Atzeres? Proper Achana for Atzeres, the day before should be in line with the theme. In line with the theme. Now, what's the problem? The problem is that you're counting down. Counting down is what you're doing, and they agree that you're counting down. Okay, so at least the day before, give me a Shabbos. Why? Because Shabbos is a day where you don't work. There's no Amal. It's a Tainug. And you don't schedule it. You don't schedule, God schedules it. So give me a day that God schedules. Give me a day on which you don't work. That's an appropriate day where you can go into Torah. Because the next day you can have Man Torah. What's the whole Yin in Torah? Momayla Lamata. The day before. So it's bad enough that we're counting down for it. And we don't know exactly how they reconcile that. It's bad enough that you're counting down, which is your avodah. But let at least the day before Matan Torah be a day that's all about not my work, because Torah is not your work. Torah, you don't do any work. You don't do any work in Torah. It's Alzma Ma'ila. So the Rebbe is connecting their shitta that Matan Torah is Dafka Sunday, that Atzeres is Dafka Sunday within the Ma'ila. So let's go a little further and say, and if you have a calendar that doesn't even have a notion of being Mekadosh Ma'at Ma'ila, that underscores the point even more. Then the Rebbe does an amazing thing. The Rebbe quotes the Ovis the Reb Nosson. The Ovis the Reb Nosson says the story of how the Tzedukin and Baitusin came about. And the Rebbe then infuses this teaching with deeper meaning. So Ovis the Reb Nosson says like this: Antignish Isaychai Kibel Mishim Atzadik. This we have this in Pirkei Avos. Hu Hayo Omer. Antignish used to say, Al Tiu Kavodim Amisham Shenesarav Amanasa Kabel Pras. Don't serve God to receive a reward. You should serve God with the condition of not receiving a reward. Okay. So it's not such a difficult mission to understand. Serve God, not because you wanted to give you a reward. Serve God because you're doing it because of the right thing. I don't want your reward, I want you. Okay, then Ovis Nosson is a Braisa. Basically you have the mission in Ovis, and then you have other teachings from the Tanoim that revolve around it, so it's called Ovis Nosson. Antignish Isaychoi And this, the first part you had in office, this you don't. Antignis Isaichai, Haile Shnei Talmidim. Antignis had 2 students. Shayushanim B'Dvar, we used to learn his words. Vayushanim LeTalmidim, and they learned to their students. V'Talmidim LeTalmideim, and their students taught to their students. In other words, you have 3 generations after Antignos. Amdu V'Diktiku Acharein. So the students, it's not entirely clear which generation of students, and the Mefarshim go different directions. The students, one of these, the last generation of students got up, in other words, they started investigating the teachings of Antignos. The Amru, and they said, what are they saying about working without having intention for a reward? That makes no sense. You work all day and you're not going to take wages in the evening? Can't be. Something's going on here. Oh, they come up with a theory. If the rabbis believed that there was a second world, and if they believed that there was Tchias HaMesim, they wouldn't have said it. Then what's wrong? Serve God to get Gan Eden. Serve God to get Tchias HaMesim. They said, serve God without thinking about reward, because there is no reward. That's what they said. And therefore, if there is no reward, so I'm done. So Amdu Upirshu Min HaTorah, they separated from Torah V'Nifritu Mem Shnei Pratzes, then they broke into 2 separate groups. Tzedukim U'Baitzusin. Tzedukim Ashum Tzadoik. It's also interesting, what does it mean? Their group leader, Bapashas, means their group leader was Tzadoik, and Baitusim Ashum Baitois, which was another name, their group leader was Baitois. Which makes it sound like they became hedonists. Today, there's no reward, there's no afterlife, there's no Tchias, there's no Gan Eden, it's all here. So bring the gold, bring the silver, bring that, and this is that. Okay, it's hard to reconcile this with their extreme frum positions that we saw 2 weeks ago. Okay, I have some thoughts on it, but I'm not going to have time to get to. The simplest thing to say is that there were multiple groups. And there's evidence for this from other places as well. There are multiple groups, and so therefore, Lav Dafka in each way, they all align themselves. Okay, now what does the Rebbe do? The Rebbe says, let's do the following. The inside of the Sikha, the Pnim of the Sikha, what's the Rebbe saying? Their whole shit is, Alsmo Maila. Oh, Ibazoi, we can connect that with what it says in Avos Rav Nosson, that they said, the teaching we just learned. So, in other words, what bothered them over there? No schar? There has to be schar. They're like, the whole thing didn't make any sense to them. Serve not for schar? Can't be. Why? Because what's schar? You could touch it because I want to have hot dogs and hamburgers. Yeah, but you could touch it in a more ruchnistic way. What's schar? Ich will in Yana Momaila. I'll start coming Momaila. So schar is hashpos Momaila. It's all about Momaila. It's not about what I'm doing. It's all about Momaila. So because these people are such Momaila-oriented people, so for them, in a spiritual way, the Rebbe says, I'm touching the Pnimius in Yonim. The Rebbe says, it's not here in the course, but the Rebbe says, I'm explaining it in a Pnimiustic way, which maybe you could say, even if they weren't conscious about it, but maybe on a soul level, this is what's happening. It's like, it's all about what comes from above. All of Torah comes from above. Calendars coming from above. Pesach, everything we're doing has to indicate above. Nu schar comes from Omaila. So don't tell me there's no schar. Or don't tell me that I shouldn't be doing it for schar. And that's why they got stuck on this particular teaching. It's a very original and interesting interpretation of this. Okay, but they're wrong. Their emes aber is, number 26, Oich Teresh Valpeh is Giamar Messina. Teresh Valpeh came from God. Oich das was nivroim and masig mizer seichel in Torah is es Torah Hashem. When we understand the Indian and Torah, it's God's Torah. Nor then, it's wie Torah is heraufgekommen bis lapshus lamata bis as a nivrazos kind of verstehen. It's very important. This is not really applied for the dinim derabanan like a zera, but for the drushes. It's not our answer. It's not our Akav Chomer doesn't give us a human answer. It gives us God's answer. He hid it in the Torah. It's His Chachma. We figured out His answer. Und in dem, hier der Rebbe says, am Leide dike Wort, führt sich heute dem Bechuven von Matten Torah, als soll sein der Chibur Elya in V'tachtan. The Rebbe says over here, this is where the goal, the Chibur Elya in V'tachtan. Very often, when we talk about Chibur Elya in V'tachtan, we do it in the following way. Before, the Tefillin couldn't become holy, and now, after Matten Torah, it became holy. Good. But it's missing in a Kudah. Here the Rebbe says, on a whole other level. What's Chibur Elya V'tachtan? If a human being thinks and comes up with his own theory, that's 100% tachtan. What's God? God gave you the power, but it's your idea, so it's 100% tachtan. On the other hand, when you only have Torah Shebechsav, if we learn Torah Shebechsav, I know it's happening in your brain, but at the end of the day, your creativity is not here. Your personality is not here. Your haravanya is not here. What's here? God's Torah. And over then you're memorizing it. So you have an Elyon here, but the Shrach, the Tachten here is Shrach. What's the gold standard? The gold standard here is that you're going to harava. You're going to use your mind. You're going to go and spend time. To what? To investigate the code that God put here to find what answer? To find His answer. What the Eibusher says should be in this case. And then you come and say, Chayiv. That moment, when you got that, that's a chibur elyon and tachten in the most beautiful way. The tachten is here, you're here, your creativity is here, your mind is here, but it's the divine idea. That's the marriage of the divine and the human in the most perfect way. That's the chibur elyon and tachten. That's what Matan Torah is all about. It's not going to be as much as if it came from above. The far is as kav shaloi, but it's yours. Und durch them, and because we have you here, it's a much deeper thing. Kommt euch, das was Pharma und Teure da sein, der Achana von Sfiras HaOmer, is das die richtige Achana von. So we come back and we say, no, we're happy to have Shuas on Tuesday. Man Torah can be Tuesday. Don't give me a Shabbos before. I don't need a Shabbos before. You want to know what the Achana for Man Torah is? Human effort. Because that's what it's all about. It's about the human effort, which is what is the proper Hachana for Man Torah. It's because the human effort, when it's being done the right way, is able to discover what the Eibishter is saying. That's the Emes HaChibur Elyon and Tachten that we want. And so therefore, go back to Tam Sofer and Abarbanel. They came, they told you an explanation, an interesting explanation of why it's not Momaila. We're seeing that Rebbe is offering a deeper explanation of why we don't want it to be Momaila. We don't want it to be all Momaila, not only because we want a Harav and Torah, and not only because we want to save Judaism, but it's because we want a Dida B'Tachtenim. We want to have a Chibur Yichadel and Tachten, and the only way to have a Chibur Yichadel and Tachten is, the Eibusha said, part of Torah is going to be Momaila. But guess what? All of that other percent is not. It's going to come about through human Oravanya, and that's what enables the Chibur Elyon and Tachten. And so, this is just a very, for me personally, interesting way of coming to these very important ideas that we all understand are very important to learn and understand about what we believe and why we believe it, and seeing how there were those who seem to have had taken a different view, and as is always the case, as the Rebbe writes in many letters, that the people who made those types of choices essentially were making a choice of self-destruction, because Torah is the elixir of Jewish existence, and so therefore if you stick to Torah you have it, and if not the last two things we'll leave out. It takes it to the next level. Shalom HaYisrael.